The Friends of the East Broad Top is a nonprofit that was organized 40 years ago to preserve the East Broad Top Railroad. It was recognized that it was a rare national industrial treasure, and the Friends were determined to preserve it. So since that time, in continuous existence, they have contributed restoration projects, money, time, and effort to support the railroad, continuing to today with the renaissance of the railroad under the East Broad Top Foundation. So we're here today in the Friends Museum. The museum is located in Robertsdale, Pennsylvania, and Robertsdale is the southern terminus of the East Broad Top Railroad. The community is in continuous existence since its creation as a company town. The building we're in was a part of the original historic railroad fabric. It's the old post office. Across the street is the station, and the Friends stepped in and preserved these as part of kind of the living legacy of the railroad. And it continues today in the exhibits that we have that demonstrate both the coal mining industry of the railroad as well as the surrounding communities and people. It will give you chills sometimes if you go around and walk around this museum, because not only do you have pictures that show the buildings and the structures and the people and so on, but we also have oral histories. And we've got snippets of the actual miners and engineers and people who lived here talking about the experience of working for the railroad in the mines and the things they did in the community back in the day.
A picnic was a picnic. Everybody come there, horses and buggies.
So back in the 70s, the Friends realized that there were still a lot of people around who had worked for the railroads and in the coal mines and lived locally, and they started recordings. And so these are the actual experiences, the firsthand thoughts, impressions, feelings of the people involved with the railroad. And so when we walk around the museum today, we can immerse ourselves in that experience and hear from them direct, firsthand in their voices what it was like. So these oral history recordings that we have are kind of one of the crown jewels of our collection. They've been collected in old cassette tape formats over the years. And of course, those are prone to deterioration, and we can't afford to lose these. Last year, the Friends applied for a grant from the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission, PHMC, and it was a Historic Records Care grant, Archives and Records Care. And the purpose of the grant is to preserve, to digitize, to transcribe, and to make publicly accessible these rare interviews. We joined with two of our other organizations locally, obviously with the railroad itself, the foundation, and with the Coal Miners Museum, just right up the street here, the Broad Top Coal Miners Museum, because they also have recordings. And so together, those collections tell a story that none of the organizations can tell alone, and we begin to digitally reintegrate those stories. So in addition to the preservation, the pulling together the stories is kind of a unique thing with this grant, and I think equally important, the material will then be available through the Pennsylvania library system to anyone, school children, anyone who wants to do research on this, through Pennsylvania Photos and Documents. This digital preservation project will enable us to preserve those stories and the voices for future generations, because it's one thing to read a transcript, but to hear it in the person's own words gives you real insight into the person and the time that you just can't get any other way. Because when you talk about the experiences that people have, you're getting into real industrial history, you're getting into social history. There are the people who worked here and the things they did and its impact on the economy and the communities.
My job as the archivist is to really work with professionals, and so we are preparing the materials actually for transport. We'll be personally transporting these materials, the cassette tapes, the film, which is 8mm, 16mm, very fragile film that hasn't been taken care of for a very long time, to a third-party vendor, and so they'll be able to take these analog materials and actually digitally reformat them, where we will receive the digital formatting, and then they'll also be able to guide us for then physically protecting the analog materials for permanent storage, because we will retain them.